here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we failed drag queen that referred to the president of the United States as Hitler. I'm talking about smoky-eyed sociopath J.D. Vance, who we here at iHip News refer to as Lil Smokey. He went and substituted in on Charlie Kirk's podcast today in the office of the vice president. And he is engaging in full-blown lying propaganda. He starts off the clip that I'm about to play, disparaging The Nation magazine and untruthfully linking it to being funded by George Soros, which is 100% false. And The Nation has gone on record and not sanitized the body of work that remains after the murder and assassination of Charlie Kirk. They have very plainly written out exactly what he stood for and what his movement stood for. And here's Lil Smokey talking about that. And then a follow-up video proving that Lil Smokey is a lying liar. Play the clip.
Accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, "Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously." But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words.
If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. So there it is, Lil Smokey, the sitting vice president of the United States, lying. And it's breathtaking that he lies like this in the digital age when it's so immediately provable what Charlie Kirk said about black women in this ongoing pervasive effort by MAGA to demonize and ridicule and dehumanize black women, when the whole thing that prompted this whole thing, as far as I can see it, is MAGA on MAGA crime. And they can't deal with it. They can't take it. And so they are lying propagandists that go back to their old playbook, as they always do, beat up on black people. And I am so sick of it. And this podcast is an ally to the black community. And Little Smokey, that is just so incredibly regressive and painful for a sitting Vice President of the United States to excuse and lie about overt, provable, demonstrative racism.
It's so insulting that he thinks we're so stupid that we're not going to fact check him. And here's the thing. The people that watch Charlie Kirk believe what Charlie Kirk said. When they are all in on white supremacy and black women aren't as smart, they believe that. So when J.D. Vance tells them Charlie Kirk never said that, when they salivated when he said that, I just wonder how that hits with them, because they don't think Charlie Kirk was wrong.
The people within the Charlie Kirk movement obviously believe all of this stuff. Absolutely. And are inherently racist. I think what J.D. Vance and the MAGA administration is trying to do now is whitewash Kirk before other people find out what he really was about. I read a stat that at the time of Charlie Kirk's murder, he had like 1.7 Instagram followers. Now he has over 11 million. And so what the White House and this fascist, and I did say fascist. This fascist regime is trying to do is what all fascist regimes try to do, which is propagandize and whitewash. You're going to have center people that might identify as Republican, might identify as independents, might identify as Democrats that don't really know. They don't listen to these podcasts. They don't listen to extreme far right podcasts or our podcasts. And so they just, vice president is speaking. And they're just hoping to turn and inject some of this in, that the person that they are propping up, that they're having moments of silence for at NFL football games, who all of those football players, the overwhelming majority, had black mothers. They're all having to do a moment of silence for a racist. And this is just classic white people whitewashing history. This is intentional. It is on purpose, and these are the lies that racists spread and have always spread. And then moving along, it's important to realize,
We were making progress. Has racism always been a part of this country? Sadly, yes. But we're making progress. And then this black man won 2 elections in a row. I mean, it wasn't even close. He moves into the White House and it broke the Republican Party. It broke them to a place to where all of this racism now is streamlined. And here is Megyn Kelly on her podcast admitting exactly how broken she is over Obama's 2 terms.
We don't feel like ourselves. We haven't felt like ourselves in a while. And I'm sorry to get political, but I'm just going to be honest. We haven't felt like ourselves since Barack Obama. I just think he was such a slick snake. You know, he was this affable guy who was like wearing good suits and looked the part and sounded the part and dressed the part, but was so divisive in his messaging. The left, they look at
Please. He was not divisive. What was so divisive about Barack Obama being in office is that you can't handle it because the Republican playbook is always to pick on the marginalized. The default setting of it is always to oppress. And for her to say, I'm not trying to get political, would be like me starting off this podcast by saying, hey guys, I'm not trying to get political. Put a sock in it. That is so crazy. And this takes me back to a quote that Trump had yesterday at Bedminster. Smart people don't like me.
right.
So, I mean, this is you know, this is the way it goes. But I want to play this for you guys in pubs. This is a black pastor. Now, I'm an atheist. I'm not a Christian. But every time I hear black pastors talk, I like what they say 1,000,000 times better than what these hateful Christian nationalist, white, hellfire damnation pastors say. And so here's a black pastor that is fighting back, and this is just good for the soul. Play the clip.
Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be assassinated. But I'm overwhelmed seeing the flags of the United States of America at half staff, calling this nation to honor and venerate a man who was an unapologetic racist and spent all of his life sowing seeds of division and hate into this land. And hearing people with selective rage who are mad about Charlie Kirk but didn't give a damn about Melissa Hortman and her husband when they were shot down in their home tell me I ought to have compassion for the death of a man who had no respect for my own life. I am sorry, but there's nowhere in the Bible where we are taught to honor evil. And how you die does not redeem how you lived. You do not become a hero in your death when you are a weapon of the enemy in your life. I can abhor the violence that took your life, but I don't have to celebrate how you chose to live.
This is a moment, you guys. This is a real moment for all of the white Americans in this world that stood with the civil rights movement in the 60s and marched with these people and were allies for civil liberties, for justice, for equality. And this is a moment for Americans to stand with the black community.
Thanks for the likes.
With the immigrant community, with the trans community, with the gay
Educational
community, and stop
purposes.
letting them define us, that we want them dead. Here's the deal, Megyn Kelly, Little Smokey, we don't want you dead. We don't think about that. We think about ways for people to have health care. We think about ways to make it easier for people to vote, not the chicken shit gerrymandering stuff that you do in black neighborhoods. You don't have as many polling places. And now in Georgia, you won't let them have a glass of water while they're waiting in line. You made that illegal. We're looking for more humanity. We're looking for a better place. All you all do is spew lies. And this is a moment where we all have to stand where we want to be as a country. And I want to be with these people. I want to be with the people who this horrible white patriarchy has constantly oppressed. I do not want to go this far back. It makes me so sick that so many white people in my own neighborhood vote for this shit and are celebrating a racist. Now, I am so sad by the violence that I saw when that man was shot. I'm a human being, and seeing that happen to another human being deeply, deeply disturbs me. And I abhor all violence. But I agree with this pastor, this atheist, this white lady atheist agrees with that black pastor 100%. The way he dies did not excuse all of the racist shit he spewed in his life. It just doesn't. What he said about black people, what he said about Martin Luther King, what he said about gay people, what he said about women. It is inexcusable. It is regressive, and it is evil. I completely agree. And it continues to be that this person, it's like the Smithsonian. We're whitewashing history at the Smithsonian. We're whitewashing Charlie Kirk's life. The reality is, it's a lot of people support him. He had a lot of followers. He made a lot of money going to campuses, and he did bring the youth movement to Donald Trump. But in my opinion, that was for the wrong reason. And I can have compound emotions. I can be totally upset and sad by the fact that he died, empathetic for his widow and his children, but I cannot excuse how racist he was. But I want to move on to Kash Patel, you guys. All right. Kash Patel is completely unqualified to be in the FBI. He's unqualified to be the director of the FBI. And we cannot believe anything that this administration is saying about this shooting, period. And you have to understand that for decades, the reason why I started this talking about racism is for decades, institutions have framed people for crimes, particularly black people. It's widely documented. I'm not making this up. Give it a goog. And here is Kash Patel, I believe, doing just that in this description that he gave about a letter that he says was written that doesn't exist in a Fox News interview.
Write a written note before the assassination attempt. That's what the governor said yesterday. And what did that say? If you could.
So what I'm able to say, I'm sorry. So what I'm able to say is I addressed it partially earlier. Is that the written note we believe what did exist. And we have evidence to show what was in that note, which is, and I'm going to summarize, basically saying, the suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting within the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
Okay, this is what they do. The fix is in on this thing, you guys. I mean, the fix is in, and this is just absolutely horrible. But Kash Patel, who wore shirts and hats on his podcast that said cash money. This is literally like fast forward a year from now, and Pumps and I are Kash Patel and Dan Bongino running the FBI. We're completely unqualified to do it, but I guarantee you I could do a better job than this dipshit.
Yeah.
But this is interesting. Some put this up, Kylie. Huffington Post is reporting that new reporting from Fox News indicates that Attorney General Pam Bondi and her deputy Todd Blanche, he's the one that went and allowed the child sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell to lie and moved her to prisons, are not pleased with FBI Director Kash Cha-ching-ching Money Patel's performance and want him fired or reassigned, although both reportedly denied the claim. So they want to cash out, and this is coming from Fox. So if this was coming from, like, you know, The Guardian or something, I would be like, okay, whatever. But this administration 100% intentionally leaks stuff to Fox. So there is, of course, trouble in paradise. They're corrupting this investigation. I don't think we can believe a word that this FBI says. And I believe this. If the shooter had some sort of leftist ideology on social media or written somewhere, it would already be in the public domain. Stephen Miller believes that if you repeat a lie often enough in the public, then it becomes the truth. And this is what Trump did with the January 6th. They turned it into a tourist photo op, celebrate it like it was July 4th. This is what he did about the 2020 election. This is what they're doing about COVID. Now they're basically acting like it didn't exist. Meanwhile, 1 million Americans died. And so this is an administration that is completely divorced from the truth. And my thing is, Pumps, if Kash Patel does get bumped out, the people that get sent out to pasture, do they at some point break down and start tattling on what's going on inside?
History says yes, they do start tattling. But Kash Patel, okay, Bill Barr said he wasn't qualified to be an FBI agent. Bill Barr in Trump 1.0. So that's who's running the FBI, a podcaster. I think he's so far deep and he loves Trump so much. I don't know that he would do it. And I think because Trump will blame it on somebody, he'll say it was Stephen Miller and all that. So I think he will be the exception and not the rule, sadly.
Yeah, but here's the deal. Kanks is 87, clearly not in good health. I think a lot of people in Trump land are starting to see his mortality come into focus. And you have J.D. Vance.
J.D. Vance does.
Propping himself up, doing this, the podcast. And I think that you see a lot of fissures within the MAGA movement, the fissure that existed prior to Charlie Kirk's murder was the Groypers, which is Nick Fuentes, versus Charlie Kirk. There was a fissure there. A lot of people have been ostracized, like Steve Bannon. There's a couple of other, I can't remember their names. They're far-right podcasters that were completely available in Trump 1.0. Now, Trump won't take their phone calls, won't invite them to the White House. Crickets from Trump. And they're starting conspiracy theories online that Trump's FBI is lying and that Israel really shot Charlie Kirk. So this doesn't ever hit mainstream, but this is what's going on in the world beyond, CNN, Fox, MSNBC. There are all of these, right-wing podcasters, and there's a lot of friction in these places, a lot. It's really fascinating. I've really been diving into it, and I plan to do this weekend kind of an expose on that, because I think part of the problem with understanding the killer's motives is there are all of these little pockets online that people go and find themselves in. Like right now, y'all are here with us. And this is one little silo in one little pocket, So it's really interesting because this kid, the shooter, you guys, all the memes and stuff he put down, it's a world that none of us are really privy to. You really have to be like a Gen Z gamer kid to know what they're talking about. So anyway, Kash Patel, we'll see if he's around in the next week or two. But that's all we have for right now. We have another episode coming out later today, which is a deep dive on Stephen Miller. You want to make sure you share that because it's terrifying. And I think we all need to know what he's up to. And he's the one really running the country, sadly. All right. We'll see you all later.